Hi, I'm Jo Morris and I am the creator of Sci Recipes. This is the third video I'm making, but it's the first where I ventured outdoors to try and make one of my recipes that will help you learn a little bit of science. Today I've travelled to the Giant's Causeway on the shores of Northern Ireland. Hopefully I can find a spot amongst those tourists over there and I'll show you a recipe that will teach you how they were formed. The causeway was formed 50 to 60 million years ago in the Paleocene epoch, and the landscape here would have looked very different then. In fact, the sea wouldn't have been there and you would have been able to walk over to Greenland. As Greenland moved away from Europe and the North Atlantic started to form, there would have been loads of volcanic activity. The rocks here were formed from one of the lava flows from one of those eruptions. Rock that has erupted from a volcano, flowed over the surface and then cooled is called basalt. But it's not the type of rock that draws people here, it's the shape. It's not a pile of rocks, but an ordered system of hexagonal columns. Let's look at the columns first. When something cools, it shrinks, it hardens, and then it cracks. Because lava flows are tabular in shape, that means they cover a wide area but are very thin in height. The cooling can be accommodated easily in the vertical, but not very easily in the horizontal. These basaltic columns are therefore formed by that uneven shrinking as the lava cooled. The shape of the column simply comes down to Mother Nature following some simple rules of physics and mathematics. In geometry, there are only 3 tessellating shapes, meaning that they can be repeated and placed next to each other without any gaps. These are the equilateral, triangle, square, and hexagon. Of these, the hexagon is the most efficient shape, as it contains the largest area for any given perimeter. Everywhere you look, you'll be able to see examples of nature utilising this fantastic shape, the most famous being the honeycomb design from bees. Dragonfly eyes contain 30,000 hexagons. One of the largest hexagons in the solar system was discovered in 1982 by the Voyager probe as it flew by Saturn. The cloud patterns around the North Pole forms a hexagon-shaped cloud that is twice the diameter of Earth. So, in true Sci Recipes fashion, I've created a recipe that you can make at home and then you can tell everybody else about the Giant's Causeway. Now, I couldn't find a food that cools in the same way that lava does to produce the hexagonal shape, so we're going to have to produce our own. Instead, I've chosen a traditional recipe from this part of Northern Ireland, and that is the humble oatcake. For the recipe, you're going to need medium-grained oatmeal, wholemeal bread flour, some salt, and some chopped up pumpkin seeds. Stir together before adding olive oil and water and continue to stir. Start to use your hands to form it into a ball of dough. Put the ball of dough onto a board and start to roll it out. When the dough is half a centimetre thick, take a knife and the rolling pin and start to cut out the hexagons. You first need to put the rolling pin parallel to your body and start to use it as a guide to cut some straight lines. Cut on both sides of the rolling pin before rolling down the dough and cutting another line. You want to keep on doing this until you've cut all the way down through the dough. Place the rolling pin back on the dough at 5 to 11 o'clock direction. Cut with the knife again 2 parallel lines. Again, keep repeating this until you have cut all the way through the dough. Draw a line with your finger where the corners intersect at the 2 to 7 o'clock position and put the rolling pin down in place. Start to cut with the knife 2 parallel lines using the rolling pin as a guide again. Lift the rolling pin up and you should be able to see a hexagon shape has been formed. Keep on cutting using the rolling pin as a guide. Don't worry if they're a little bit wonky. If you look all around the Giant's Causeway, you'll see some odd-shaped hexagons. When you finish cutting all your dough, use a fish slice to lift up your oatcakes. With the leftover bits, squidge them back together into a ball of dough and repeat the cutting process. Put your oatcakes onto a baking tray. Put them in the oven and cook them at 18 minutes at 180 degrees Celsius. Carefully take them out of the oven and put them on a cooling tray to cool down. When you're ready to eat your oatcakes, stack them up on your cheese board to make them look like the Giant's Causeway steps. They go great with cheese and chutney, or make a great snack for when you want to explore the great outdoors. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope you get into the kitchen, start baking and start learning some science.